And here we are, episode 1. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are tuning in, we thank you for giving us your time today. This is the Saga podcast. I am your host, Marvin Blue, coming at you live from the Lone Star State of Fort Worth, Texas. With me, as always, is my partner in crime, my brother from another mother, the City of Angels bad boy himself, Michael Anthony.
I'm gonna have to get a tattoo that says that.
There you go.
Like it.
All right, so here we are, Michael. Man, let's start with the how did the two of us coming from two different worlds come together and create this crazy idea of doing a podcast?
Yeah, man, I think we all have our unique experiences, and you and I have worked together on some weddings before. We met at a conference years back, and I think we have a lot of stories that can help photographers move them along in their career, and I thought it would be a good idea to partner up on this and see exactly what we can talk about, what we can create, and how we can inspire others.
Awesome, I love it. And that was the main thing was like people think that the success comes overnight. You wake up one day and you're at the top of the game, not realizing, man, we've eaten it hard in this industry in the beginning. We all have our origin stories. Today's episode, I wanted it to be about you, first and foremost. Telling us your story, where it all began, kind of those things that people didn't know, and we'll just kind of start from the beginning. We'll build from that.
Awesome, awesome. Let's go ahead and get going. And for anybody who is new, this is our first podcast. It might be your first podcast if you're starting with us from the beginning here. We're covering the photography industry and our journeys through it, and we're going to be working to provide info, inspiration, and education for new photographers out there who are making their way into this industry as professionals.
Awesome. Yeah. And just a caveat on that, what Michael said, it's really just to let you know that, man, we all have our stories. We all began somewhere. We didn't wake up and just, choose greatness. We had to work at it. And, the relationships that I built in this industry over the years that I've been in have been amazing. I've got my second family from it. And, here we are today now doing a crazy podcast and, coming from two different worlds. And, this journey is going to be awesome for sure.
Awesome, awesome.
So, Mike, where did it all begin, man? When you picked up the camera, what was your take on it?
Yeah, so I started back in 2011 and ended up buying a camera because I like taking pictures, just like many other people, right? Ended up using it to photograph photos of family, my niece and nephew. I was driving up there. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law had just passed away. He was a police officer, and I was at the time too. He had passed away on the job. He left my sister with my niece and my nephew, and I was spending a lot of time with them. And I bought the camera to take photos of them, and started posting those images online. On Facebook, and a lot of not family friends, but people in my network on Facebook started asking me if I would take photos of their families, and began, one family at a time. Eventually, somebody came to me and asked me if I did wedding photography, and like most new photographers, I'm like, sure, I'll photograph anything, right? Anything you're willing to pay me for, I'll go ahead and do it. And I found a passion for shooting weddings pretty early on in my career. I would say within a year, I had shot my first wedding, my first paid wedding. And like many, didn't get paid very much to do it. It was about $600, and I think I drove 300 miles to shoot their engagement session, and then another 300 miles the opposite direction a few months later to shoot their wedding. Clearly, I didn't have any business acumen, didn't know anything about anything. But I had a passion for photography. I loved taking photos, and I was determined to make it a career. So, lo and behold, a couple years later, ended up my boss at the time. So I was working in a traffic division for LAPD, and my sergeant came up to me one day and he said, "Hey, starting next month, you're not going to have any more weekends off. We have to move you to a new assignment." And that was September. So, as any budding wedding photographer if you know, October is the busiest month of the year, at least for most parts of the country it is. And I had about 10 weddings on the books the next month. So I had to make a decision, and, at the time, a lot of family telling me, hey, don't leave, you have a pension, you have, retirement, you have benefits. It's going to be hard to make it in the photography industry, in which they weren't lying about, right? As we would find out over time. But I decided at the time it was my time to take that chance, and I asked my captain at the time if I could have a leave of absence, and she gave it to me for a year. So it was kind of like a risk free way of doing this because I was able to in my mind I was just saying, hey, if this doesn't work out in a year, I'll go back to my job, and yeah, it'll be fine. Lo and behold, within a month or two, I was putting 100% of effort into this career. I was learning marketing techniques. I was learning new business models, and the business just took off. And within like 2 months, I knew I wasn't going to go back to working for LAPD. So I put in my resignation, and I've been doing this ever since. So weddings have been the main thing that we've been doing for a long time, up until maybe a year ago when we really started to transition into studio portraiture, pet photography. My wife is doing boudoir, and we built a thriving business. So, in that meantime, I became an educator. I had an opportunity to go teach at various different conferences where I met you, Marvin, over at Shutterfest. I believe it was probably 2015, 2016, something like that.
Yeah, God, yes, God, we're pushing 10 years of this. That's crazy.
Yeah, time goes by.
Uh,
Time goes by quick.
and
Um,
if, I mean,
Yeah, and by the way, if you guys haven't ever been to a conference, and we'll probably end up having an episode on this later down the line, but you should absolutely try to get to one. I mean, I remember going to my first conference. It was WPPI in about 2012, and my eyes lit up. I was getting to meet all the people that I idolized, and
yep,
at the time there were rock star photographers, right? There was a lot more notoriety behind them. The camera companies would put a lot more into them. So meeting those people, was a big deal, and I got to take a lot of inspiration from them, and really influenced my career moving forward. But yeah, so that's kind of my backstory, and how I got started.
yeah, it's funny you talk about WPPI being your first one in 2012. 2013 was my first conference. It was WPPI, and just like you said, it was a rock star mentality of like, and I was just overwhelmed. Like that was the best way to describe it. My first experience was it was definitely I thought it was in over my head. I was ready to go home. I was like, I don't belong here. I'm gonna stick to being a teacher. My origin story is begins I picked up the camera as a kid. I knew I wanted to be a photographer. I know it sounds cliche, but I knew as a kid I wanted to do it. But believe it or not, I wanted to do sports. I wanted to take those iconic sports images. I want, the Ali, what's my name, the Michael Jordan dunk shot, like all those great sports moments as a kid who played sports growing up. I wanted to be that guy that took those pictures because I wasn't blessed with the size to be, to make it in the NFL. I was undersized, but I had, loved the game. And I thought photography was going to be the closest way for me to be close to the games that I loved playing as a kid. Had aspirations of shooting in the Olympics, the Super Bowl, you name it. Shooting WrestleMania. If you grew up in Texas, wrestling's a big deal out here. So, that was something that, hey, when they asked you as a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everybody said their careers always said photography. And, it's funny today that all my friends from high school were like, you were the kid that actually did what they said they were going to do as a career growing up. So that was pretty cool. But I mean, I picked up the camera when I was in the army is when I really took it serious. I said, I'm going to take some classes. I had time. We came back from a deployment and they were like, you guys got to find hobbies. You need to find something healthy and productive to do during your off time so you're not getting in trouble. And I saw they were doing photography classes and I just signed up for classes and honestly didn't look back when I left the army and became a high school teacher. I was doing just portraits on the side, the $100 portraits and, thought I was really doing something. And I did that for about 2 years before actually like, hey, I should start a business. And then that's when I went to my first conference and, put the business hat on and was like, oh, there's levels to this. And I need to not just be a person that owns a camera getting a couple dollars, but actually take it serious. And within a year, I knew there was something there because I was matching my income as a teacher. So it was easy for me to transition to full time in 2014 when I walked away from teaching just to do it full time because I was making more money at that point than I was teaching.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer at that point for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you took some photography classes. Were those in high school, or where did you take those?
High school was not available. I took the meat of my classes was in the army. They were just night class that offered basic photography 101. There was a film class. I butchered tons of rolls of film. So the dream of having a dark room and doing the old school filming by hand, that dream kind of died very fast. But I still learned how to do it just because when I'm a student of the game and I wanted to learn those different things. But I focused a lot on digital. When I got to Arizona State, I was just taking the classes just to get an easy A. But I was having fun with it, you know.
Yeah,
And then
that's
that's when
cool.
it's like, let's make some money with this. Why not? And it's just the $100 portraits, family portraits. Take a couple, senior portraits doing this, and then like my first wedding literally was just I was doing second shooting gigs and just trying to build my portfolio and learn the camera and kind of quote unquote fake it till you make it. And then I got catapulted into my first wedding by accident because I showed up to second shoot because a friend recommended me to second shoot in his place because he couldn't be there. And when I got there, the photographer that was leading the wedding was actually fighting with the bride because apparently, now mind you, this is in 2012, at the end of 2012, before I went to my first conference when I decided like, oh, I should take this serious. But that wedding was kind of like my pivot was in that moment was I showed up to the wedding. The photographer was arguing with the bride because I guess at that time she still owed him money for the wedding. He asked about it, and I guess the response was, I'll give it to you when I give it to you. And he was like, well, I'm not taking any more pictures until you pay me my money. And they started arguing. So I walked into an argument, and then he just walked out the wedding. And then they just came up to me, handed me some cash, and was like, "We'll get you on the back end. Can you just take these? Can the groom comes up to me, he's like, can you just take the pictures?" And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like I just was like, and I'm like, what do I do? And I'm calling up my buddy who got me the gig. I was like, hey, the photographer walked out. They want me to shoot lead. He was like, yeah, go ahead and do it. And I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. He's like, yeah, you do. You'll be fine. He's like, dude, look, they don't have a photographer. So if you go in there, if you completely dick this up, they won't get mad because they're just so happy that you're going to cover down that they can't even get mad at you. And I was like, all right. So I went in scared out of my mind and was just like, what is everything Brian does? Do everything Brian does. And I just did all that. Took Luckily they were a fun couple, so everything was like super candid and easy, so it gave me a false sense of security though because I thought I was a shit afterwards because it was a great wedding, but it was because I had the couple that allowed it to be really easy for me. And then at the end of it, when I gave them the pictures, I burned it onto a CD when I finally gave it to them, and they were like, man, we wish we would have hired you in the beginning. What's your company what's your company name so we can recommend you to our friends? And I didn't have a company name. That's when I was like, I got to start a business because I don't, I can't. I'm like, hey, this guy named Marvin takes pictures. I can't. It can't be that way. If they're saying we should recommend you, that was like my pivot, and I was like, all right, cool. So 2013, I was like starting a business, doing this. I was just googling everything I could think of, and that's kind of what got me in here. So I've been going strong since 2013.
Yeah. So what was the one thing that made you feel like you could take the leap? Was it just matching your income with your teacher salary, or was it like did you already know
Honestly,
beforehand you
yeah.
were going that direction?
In the beginning, for me in the beginning, I really thought if I matched what I made on a paycheck, that was like to me that wedding was a win. Or if I came close to what a paycheck was, that was like, oh, key to victory. So I mean, if you gave me $1,000 during that time, I thought, I mean, that was a luxury wedding. That was, they were going to get everything out of me. That was the experience because I came in during the shoot and burn era too, so I didn't know anything about sales, and it took time and obviously going to conferences and speaking to others and hearing the stories and just figuring out like, man, this guy next to me is making more money selling an album than I'm shooting in this entire wedding. Like, there's levels to this, and again, it took me getting out of my own way and pushing my ego to the side and just accepting that yeah, I might be great in my mind, but there's a whole world out there that tells me that has really pegged me to you're not on this level yet. You got some work to do, but the journey is that growth is where it's been at. Like I'm where I'm at today because I was willing to take that leap and humble myself.
I think that that ambition is what separates a lot of photographers who become successful from the ones who don't, right? Because as you mentioned, there are levels to this, and it's many photographers. You look at like the top earning photographers. Most people would be very shocked at how much money they actually make in their businesses. But the average photographer, according to I believe it was Salary.com or one of them, it's somewhere around $30,000 a year. It's not a lot of money, especially for those who
Yeah.
are owning their own business. And I would say that if you become content in the very beginning with earning that kind of an income, it's very hard to break out of that mold and get to those next levels, right? You had mentioned IPS. IPS is obviously if you're a newer photographer, IPS stands for in-person sales. It essentially means you're selling products of or digital products or printed products of your imagery to your clients as opposed to a shoot and burn model, which is you get paid a flat fee and then you give them the digital files. And it's widely accepted that IPS and widely proven. I would say that a form of IPS is going to earn you a much better living from doing this. So, learning that early in your career, what kind of an impact would you say that that had on your trajectory moving forward and the way that you structured your business and your business model?
I think for me, just with with implementing IPS, and it's still always an evolving process. But the biggest thing for me was in the early days, I said yes to so much because I was trying to get my name out there, trying to get the exposure as we love to do. But it was for me, it was, oh, they're paying me as much as I'm making as a teacher. That's, I gotta get the bag, get the money. And I realized I was overworking myself early in my career. When you're building, yes, you want to build as much as you can, as fast as you can, because you think time's against you. You're going through, you're in your head a lot. But when I started implementing sales, it allowed me to start picking and choosing what I did and didn't want to do. It gave me the opportunity to say, I'm not working on Christmas. I'm not working on my kid's birthday. I'm not obligated to work every weekend. Start to control my schedule and take control of that to where I am going on vacation. I am doing these things that make me happy, and I'm not obligated to what's supposed to be for me fun and something that I enjoy doing. I don't want to hate this, and if I keep it up with this mentality that I have, I'm going to eventually hate this job, and I don't want that to. I don't want to do that to myself, because I'm at the time I was, again, a high school teacher, and I was like, I already have a job that I'm starting to hate, and that was being a teacher because of the lack of pay, the lack of everything. I can go. That's a whole another episode about we could do an episode on working a 9 to 5 job while building your business. I mean, that was the first couple years of my life. So I've been down that road, and and I still explore that part of the world. I talk to people all the time that say, I don't feel like a real photographer because I have a 9 to 5, and I'm like, do you get paid to use the camera and take pictures or do video? And they say yes. So then you're a real photographer. So by definition, you're a real photographer. Don't let anyone tell you anything different. But getting sales and being able to create an average income from each client, it allows me to know how much I need to work or don't need to work. I know what my yearly goals are, what I want to make, and you know, when you're chasing that, you know, part of the cool thing is when you're on your journeys and you're chasing certain goals and you hit those goals, and it's the what's next. And, can you go from shooting weddings for $1,000 to one day saying, man, one day I want to shoot a wedding for 5,000, and it seemed like it was so far out there. And then when it finally happens, you're like, oh man, now you're thinking to yourself, how can I shoot a wedding for 10,000? It's like I always feel like I'm chasing that future version of myself.
And sometimes getting to that level just requires you to just take the leap, right? And you've heard the story before, I'm sure you have, where photographer raises their prices and all of a sudden their business explodes. And
Yep.
there's a variety of reasons as to why that happens, from a consumer psychology standpoint to, just having the perception of your brand be more professional. Because sometimes if you're charging too little, people perceive that as inexpensive or not good. But it's amazing when that happens, right? I mean, you're just taking a step of going from $1,000 to $5,000. One day you raise your prices, someone's willing to pay it, and then you start finding that ceiling slowly and slowly and slowly. And I'll tell you, there is a ceiling. You'll get to a point where, hey, you raise your prices too much, it slows down your bookings. But most of the time, that ceiling is a lot further down the road than most people realize.
Yeah. I mean, so something I want to ask you, because I mean, like, and we kind of came from a similar background where we had 9 to 5s with guaranteed incomes and you had future pensions and everything. So when we talk about taking those leaps, man, like walking away from law enforcement, and I mean, I know you had your year to do it, but when there's a mentality behind what I call the guaranteed income, the guaranteed money. How how were you able to confidently walk away from guaranteed money to take on, running a business, being an entrepreneur, and like having that? Because I mean, you're married, and explaining that with your wife, hey, this is what I want to do, and you're walking away from guaranteed income, and you're taking that risk of not
Yeah,
no income.
Jen is always super supportive. So like one of the things, one of the reasons I married her is because if I have a question or anything that I'm doubtful about, I'll always go to her for advice, right? And I could always run that advice off of her, and she's always willing to give me her honest opinion, one way or the other. If she thinks something's a bad idea, she's not afraid to tell me. But when it came down to doing this, I think she kind of saw where our business was going and the trajectory of it. And at the time, by the way, she was a student, right? She was in nursing school. And the thought process, I guess, was like, okay, well, even if this doesn't work out, within a few years, she'll be a working nurse. That's good income and we'll be all right. That was the plan. So when I left in 2014, I don't think she had finished her nursing school until the following year. And then we assumed maybe 5 to 6 months to get a job after that. So we were like, okay, we have to get through 18 months before we have that guaranteed income. And during that time, I could always go back, right? So that was kind of the safety net I think she needed to be like, hey, if this is something you want to do, go ahead and do it. And you're right, walking away from that, it is a tough decision. I mean, becoming a police officer, it requires a lot of work. And anybody who's ever gone through that process, and there's not as many people these days who want to do it, but even back then, it was a strenuous process. You had to go through, a background investigation. You had to do a bunch of physical fitness tests, and you had to show commitment to them by going to their physical fitness classes beforehand. So all in all, it took me about 2 years to get hired. That was a good chunk of my life, spent doing that. So leaving that and then leaving all of the benefits that came with it was a tough decision. But at the end of the day, I got to a point where I just like didn't want to go to work anymore, right? And I think anybody who's made this leap to a full-time job has gotten to that point. And even if you haven't, like you might have been at a previous job before and you realized you hated that job, and you knew it was time to leave. And I felt like I got to that point. Not that I hated the job; it was an amazing job. I got to do really amazing things, but it just wasn't something that I got excited to get up and go do every day. And conversely, even today, as a photographer, I'm excited to get up and go to work every morning. It's like I get to do something new. I get to create something new. So I made the right decision. At the time, it was a lot harder to do that, especially when you had a lot of family pressure, like saying, "Hey, don't do this. It's not a good idea," which makes sense. I mean, most families are gonna, they're gonna look at, guaranteed income, pension, and everything, and they're gonna say, "Hey, you should probably reconsider walking away from those things for something that's so unknown." But at the end of the day, we have to make our own. We have to be our own advocates. We have to make our own decisions, and we have to do what feels right in our gut. Providing there is a plan to succeed, right? I'm not going to tell
Yeah,
everybody.
absolutely.
So,
I always tell people, don't go in blind. Do not go in blind. If
yeah.
I
So
ever
plan.
gave the best advice I ever gave anybody is don't go in blind. I mean, if you get a little bit of early success, make plans with it. Make plans to build off of that. But man, just the days of I bought a camera, I took a couple classes. Where's the money at? I wish they existed. They don't exist
No,
anymore.
it's
They're
just
few and far between.
a lot of people say it's a tough industry. That's absolutely true. There's a lot of competition. Most people are not doing it right, which means that they're not charging a livable wage, which means that if you happen to find a client and that client has had prior experience in any way, shape, or form with another photographer, let's just say you're shooting, a portrait session and they got portraits done for their, a senior portrait session, they got portraits done from their previous child. They're basing what they spend with you based on what their experience was with that past client, right? So admittedly, if most people are not charging a livable wage in whatever market that you're working in, you're going to have an uphill battle whenever you come across that situation. So finding ways to create value and show the client why you are worth what you are charging is the biggest challenge in this industry. So is it impossible to do? Absolutely not. I mean, you absolutely can. You and I are both proof of that. Like you can find success in this industry, and you could do it relatively quickly if you have the right education. But what holds most photographers back is the confidence in making those decisions, like charging the right amount, saying, understanding that your work is good enough to sell for a livable wage, and then not planning properly. Like if you want a six-figure income, you probably have to aim for close to double that in most cases, sometimes even more than that in actual revenue and sales because of the cost it takes to obtain those clients and run that business. So while that seems daunting, because I know when I first heard those kinds of numbers before, I thought they were impossible. You and I both have the same mentor, Sal Zancada, a good friend of mine, and I remember listening to one of his creative lives back in 2012, and he had mentioned that he did $1 million in sales, and I remember thinking at the time, well, if I could do like a quarter of that, I'll be good. I'll be happy. But how am I going to get to a quarter of that? And I was like struggling in my mind to even reach those numbers. And lo and behold, 4 or 5 years later, we're passing the $1 million mark in sales too. So it can absolutely be done. It's just one of those things where you have to put a plan together and find a good mentor, and then follow the plan to a T but be willing to make adjustments when adjustments need to be made too.
Absolutely. And I mean, and I always say don't equate success with the dollar value either, because, whether you're doing it full time, part time, no time, anytime, think about that one client. Did you reach the potential on what you could make with that one client on the job you did? If you did, whether it's a wedding, I mean, or a senior or boudoir, maternity, or doing pets, I mean, we're talking genres that, if you took the two of us combined, we cover in so many different genres. But then individually, you break it down. I still get a high off of doing weddings, and I got maybe a few more years of weddings in me before my body says, all right, we need to slow it down. And then I'm going to be looking at doing seniors because, my oldest is now a senior in high school, and now I'm having fun doing seniors because I'm taking pictures of her. I'm taking pictures of her friends, her family, her friends' families are hiring me. And it was kind of like, okay, I have to, whether I liked it or not, there was a transition and a pivot for my business to do that. So I have to be open to just say, hey, there's other things that challenge. For me, it's always the challenges. What challenges me creatively is what gets me excited every time I grab a camera. Not that I don't get creatively excited about weddings. I still love shooting weddings. I'm one of those crazy ones that every weekend I get to go out and have a blast and go party and take pictures and get paid great money. But with seniors, it's like, okay, I've had to now fight past the being dad and taking pictures of his daughter and not having a meltdown and crying in the middle of the session because I'm like, oh, I'm taking pictures of my little girl, but I'm having a blast in that one. But then, like, just seeing her, open up and blossom in front of me in front of the camera, now I really get to see how special taking pictures is with my own kids. And I've, obviously being a parent, you take pictures of your kids all the time, and but now it means a little bit more now that I see the meaning behind it. And I'm getting to experience both ends of being both a photographer and a client to myself, because it's like, man, is this going to be that iconic picture I take of my daughter? Like no one's ever
Yeah.
going to be able to take a better picture than me of my own kid. And like I'm thinking that's the mentality I have with doing that, and just having fun with it right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of photographers, their genres that they end up falling into a lot of times become shaped by where they are at in their life. Like for instance, when we started getting into weddings, Jen and I were getting married, right? So we were planning our wedding. We were looking at wedding photographers and all sorts of other stuff at the time, and that shaped our experience. And I know a lot of photographers who have kids that get to high school age and they're wedding photographers, and all of a sudden they're not wedding photographers anymore. Now they're shooting high school seniors, which I've done a few of those sessions. We don't have a lot of them out in California, but it is a lot of fun. It's like a full-on fashion portrait shoot. It's like shooting the best part of the wedding day, and not having to do all the other stuff that isn't so fun to shoot a lot of times. So, yeah, good luck to you on that. I'm sure you're gonna do great with it as well.
Oh yeah. And so we hit a little bit on family. Okay, you being married. How long you been married now?
I want to say, I don't want to mess this up. Hang on a second.
But
It's been
Jen's
11
gonna
years.
hear this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. A little over 11 years.
Nice. Yeah, we hit
Yeah,
20 years back in November.
nice, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I feel when I start looking at the numbers and how they keep piling on, I go like 10 years, 11 years doing photography, 11 years getting married. Just like one fact keeps coming into my head, and that's that I'm getting older.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not the spring chicken I used to be. I always say, I've been with my wife 20 years now. I've been doing this now for over 10 years. Man, I got lucky being married to the woman I am, that has allowed me to be gone on weekends, to be gone weeks at a time for photography work. And, you know, she hears me talk about everybody and she doesn't even know who any of them is, but she just embraces like my world, my photography world, the people that I meet. She embraces them like family. So to me, I think, and this is my caveat to like how important is having a good support system in your journey. How important was that for you?
Oh, super important. Yeah. I mean, like, my name is obviously on the business. At the time when I started it, I didn't know, how much of a family business this would be. And I would have changed the name of it, or I would have named it something else at the time had I known. But Jen is an equal part of everything we do in the business. I mean, you've been to all the conferences you see. She's there with me almost every time. And when it comes to, planning some of our styled shoots, our portfolio work, like she's all on the back end doing all of that. She does all the education stuff in the business now. She manages our team. There's a lot of stuff that she does in our business, and she keeps asking for more. I'm like, I can't keep giving you any more responsibility. You already have a lot right now. So having that support system is like crucial because growing a business, you can do it two ways, right? You can keep it within the family, or you can hire people to help you. But at some point, you're going to need help, and help is clearly expensive. I mean, obviously, if you're trying to start a business and you have to hire employees, that's going to take away from the margins that you're making, and it's going to slow down the growth of your business. So having her here since day one, whether it be as a second shooter, starting her own boudoir line, or working on all the admin stuff on the back end of the business has been crucial. I mean, very very important. And the same goes for like our friends, our vendors, all the people that we work with. All of that stuff is really really important when it comes to growing your business, because there's going to come times, no matter what, when you get into a snag, or you have questions about something, and having those people to turn to is invaluable.
Nice. And then I guess from one trophy husband to another, how has it been to manage being this amazing? I'm kidding. Nah, just I mean, yeah, I got to shadow in on that. Tasha is, everybody knows Tasha's my wife, and been my rock since day one. Can't got together with me when I had next to nothing as a young pup in the army with no money in the bank, and so she definitely didn't marry me for the money. I definitely she did marry like you. She married me for my looks and my potential. Nah, but nah, just even in the beginning when she's like, yeah, you weren't good, and she wasn't. She's not afraid to tell people that when I first started, I was not good. I was very much average. On my best day, I was average, maybe above average, but I was not good in the beginning. But she believed in, that I was going to put in the work because she knew my ambition, and she knew this, just being this kid that she grew up with, that if I wanted something, I was going to go after it, and I've proven that time and time again. I mean, hell, I did it with her. When I wanted her, I went after her, and didn't stop until I got her,
Yeah,
which,
she was attracted to that ambition, right? That's what it
yeah.
was. It wasn't just your
I mean,
looks.
yeah, but I mean, she's also, this crazy, ridiculously amount of good looks that I have. I mean, I've got a face for podcasting. Come on. Nah, but in all seriousness, like, so, what has been like, I guess, one of your biggest highlights in your journey so far?
I would just say the travel, the things that I've gotten to do. Like I mentioned earlier, that my past career, I got to do some really cool things, and that's true. I mean, there were things that I was able to do, but large in part, that job didn't ever have me traveling, and I don't know if I did not become a photographer, I don't know that if I would have seen half of the things that I've seen. I mean, clearly as photographers, we always want to find the most aesthetic places to shoot, the coolest experiences, coolest places to go, and build your portfolio. So in doing that, I've been able to travel all around the world, and that's been a really really awesome feeling. And then also being able to help others, like as an educator. And I don't do as much teaching today as I did a couple years back, mainly because we're really locked in right now and growing the portrait side of our business and potentially moving our studio to another state. But aside from those things, when I was able to help others in education more than I am now, it was a lot of fun, and I love being able to give people some advice and actually seeing them put that advice into practice and become successful, or building their own version of success using some of the tools that I've been able to give them, and that is probably one of the most rewarding parts of my job. But yeah, definitely when it comes to seeing new things and being able to travel the world, that's one of the most amazing parts about this that I found. And I guess it's why a lot of people want to do destination weddings. I like going to travel just for fun mostly and doing the portfolio shoots. I don't like working when I'm
Oh
on
yeah.
the most, but I do have a blast when we do have destination weddings, and I do enjoy photographing those as well.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. Travel's been a blast. For me, it's, just, it's gonna sound so cheesy, but man, taking just really cool pictures, like that has been the most absolute fun for me. Just, when people look at that camera, or they look at, whether I show them the back of the camera, or they order a print, or they see their gallery for the first time, or whatever, it's that reaction. I still get a high off of that, man. Like, whether it's now that I'm doing seniors, when I see parents just literally tear up when they see the pictures for the first time, like I just get a high off of that. With weddings, when a bride sees how amazing she looks, and it's like in that moment you are the most perfect version of yourself, and you are absolutely loved by so many people. It's like to see them relive those moments. Like to me, I still get a high off of that, and those have always been fun. And as we embark, I did less traveling because of having the wife and kids. It's not a bad thing. I just I still don't like being away from the family for long periods of time. So that's always the toughest part for me. But Definitely, like I'm there with you on traveling as they get older. I'm traveling more now. I'm including my daughter on some of the trips now. I'm including my wife a little bit more on some of the trips, and now when it's in the second part of my career, seeing those different parts of the world and bringing the family on with that and letting them get to see that and see different perspectives of life and stuff.
Yeah, and you probably traveled a lot in the army, I imagine, right?
Yeah, I did definitely, and but I mean, I didn't get to include my wife as much as I wanted to in the beginning. So we now it's just making a point to try to do something every year, whether it's go to this beach or that beach, or just get away for a weekend. We're
Where did
just
you go
trying to
this
do
year?
stuff. So this year, we're spitballing a few ideas. We've looked at we're considering doing Florida, picking one of the beaches there, Panama Beach or something like that. We looked at Orange Beach as well. Newport Beach is one of our favorite spots. That's one of our like quiet hideaways. I mean, I go to Vegas every year. I go to places that I like going to. I usually go there for work every year, anyways. So I'm trying to do something outside. We definitely want to do something for sure overseas after my oldest gets done with all of her soon to be military training and first year of college. Like I'm planning a big vacation for next summer. Just haven't decided where, but we're thinking somewhere in the Caribbean or something for sure.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I went to
Just
Florida.
unplug for a week and have a blast.
Yeah, yeah. I had gone to Sarasota Beach because my
Okay.
dad wants to move to Tampa. So we've been trying to get out of California. He's been trying to convince me to go to that area, and that looked like a great vacation spot. So I would definitely look into that if you're
So
looking to.
your dad says Florida, I say Texas, and
Yeah,
then I always talk about how outside of the Texas I am poor, but in Texas I am a freaking king because I'm Texas rich.
yeah.
But California, I'm absolutely poor in California. I
I
don't know
think
how you
most
do it.
people are poor in California. Yeah, it's tough out here. Yeah,
Oh man,
yeah.
awesome. So in no future episodes, I want to definitely get Jen on, get her perspective, and just get another budding photographer on. We definitely have plans on getting a lot of our friends on here. Sharing 30 minutes of their day, and just telling us their stories, what got them started. And as we go on, we definitely going to reach out to you, the fans, the listeners, to get your ideas. We want to make this a show for the people because this is for you guys. It is for us as well, but we definitely are making it for you guys and just letting you know that through our stories, you can find your own path in your journey and find your own version of success. That's the goal.
Yeah, and in the future, we're going to have targeted episodes with educational content on it. We're going to bring on speakers who have unique experiences. But one of the things that's going to help guide us on creating content for you, the listeners here, is we need to know what you want to hear, right? We want to learn about that. So, Marvin, do we have a place set up yet for them to be able to give us requests or send us emails?
Absolutely. So, as always, we can be reached on Instagram. We're going to be the Shutter Saga podcast on Instagram. We're also on TikTok, and we are also on Facebook. So we're doing the big three right now. Email address is shuttersagapodcast@gmail.com as of right now. And then as we build this thing on, we'll have it more dialed in. But we're going to keep it very organic, grassroots right now, and just grow it from there.
Awesome.
And yes, feel free as always to support the show. Like, share, leave reviews on Google Podcast, Spotify, all the platforms that we're going to have it on. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, it'll be there. We're only going to get better from this. We're only going to keep growing from this. And again, this is the first episode. This has been, months in the making, a lot of conversations, and we finally got our schedules lined up to do this and give it to you once a week. And we're excited about it.
Yes, yes. Looking forward to future episodes.
Awesome. So, if there's nothing else, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Marvin Blue, and with me, as always, is Michael Anthony. Thanks for coming in.